Victor Wembanyama, the guy that's going to be the next face of the league, the guy that's going to carry the Spurs maybe to a surprise title this year. He's going to carry the Oklahoma City Thunder, or he's going to carry the San Antonio Spurs, past the Oklahoma City Thunder if that's the Western Conference Finals matchup that we do get. I just couldn't believe Wemby, a guy of such high character, intentionally drills Naz Reid in the jaw with an elbow last night in Game 4, gets himself ejected in the second quarter, costs his team the game. Minnesota still had to rally in the fourth quarter, but thanks to Ant-Man, they did. More on his heroics in a little bit, but Wemby basically cost the Spurs the game last night, and I think it could end up costing them the series because now Minnesota's got a new breath of life breathed into them. They lose that game last night. It's 3-1. Series is over. Now it's 2-2. We know they can beat them on the road. They already did in the first game that Ant-Man came back from with that hyperextended left knee. As this series goes on, he looks like he's getting healthier and healthier and stronger and stronger. And I think San Antonio missed a massive opportunity last night, and they've got nobody to blame but the 7'5" alien that's supposed to be the greatest player on the planet already. Well, he cost them the game last night, I think, and that ejection was absolutely 100% warranted. That was about as intentional as an elbow as you could get. Above the neck, right to the face. See you later. You're gone. Wemby better find a way to make up for that in Game 5 because he cost his team the game last night.
Yeah, it was definitely calculated. It was premeditated, that elbow swing. And, man, it was an early one. Getting, Naz Reid straight in the neck as a result. The neck snapping back in recoil fashion. And I'll be honest, in that brutal moment, I couldn't help but laugh. And the reason why is because on the camera pan out, did you see Dylan Harper's reaction behind the scene and the gas? So he's like, oh, bleep. That look on his face, he couldn't believe it. And they caught that perfectly on camera. And it was something. And I was rolling, man, because we all kind of felt his just utter shock in that moment. And you're right, man. Wemby getting tossed in the game was completely deserved. What wasn't, or what was, that went down today, something that he did not get as a result, and a repercussion I think should have happened, is either a one-game suspension or at least a fine, Pat. He got neither of those things as a result of that blatant elbow that he threw last night. And you could say, well, it's preferential treatment, it's favoritism. He's one of the faces not only of the San Antonio Spurs franchise, or the entire NBA. He's a superstar. You cannot take that superstar power off the court if you want to, draw ratings during the most important time of the year here in mid-May at the peak of the heat of the NBA playoffs. So, I think rules are rules. I think, the decision makers have got to be consistent and what they issue. If that were an elbow throw in the regular season, I guarantee you would at least drawn a fine, if not a one-game suspension. But he got nothing. Absolutely nothing for, again, what I feel, and you feel as well, was a calculated maneuver last night. That one took me aback, to say the least. I could not believe, based on the Shams Charania report earlier today, that he suffered zero extended consequences of what occurred last night. So merely a slap on the wrist for really an ugly scene and situation that, you're right, cost the San Antonio Spurs that game.
Yeah, and look, I think he should be suspended for Game 5. Let's just look at a brief history here of stuff like this that has happened in the postseason. Let's start with Meta World Peace, a.k.a. Ron Artest, who basically kind of pulled the same elbow to James Harden when he was on Oklahoma City, and Ron Artest, I think it was the Lakers. That was back in 2012, 2013, and he makes a bucket, and he's fired up, and Harden bumps him, and Ron Artest basically in his midst of his celebration swings his elbow right into the temple of James Harden. He got suspended 7 games for that. 7. Now, I know you want to say, wow, oh, come on, it was Ron Artest, this guy that was involved in the malice at the Palace, his history, come on. All right, that's fine, right? You want to pull that card? Okay, it's still 7 games. Wemby's getting 0. He's getting no fine. How about Draymond Green? Draymond Green stomps on Domantas Sabonis' chest. He gets a game suspension. Oh, well, Draymond Green's got a history of this, a history of that. Come on. I mean, where do we stop the excuses here? He intentionally elbowed Naz Reid right in the neck / in the jaw, right in the face. I mean, that's intentional, like you said, meditated as it gets. We're going to do the whole NFL thing that, oh, well, it was early enough in the game where it basically counts as the suspension itself. Nonsense. It was in the second quarter. It's not like he did it in the first 5 minutes. I mean, come on. Like, if this is not Victor Wembanyama, if this was Kelly Olynyk who pulled this off, or I'll even give you one better because Kelly Olynyk's not playing unless it's a 30-point game. If Luke Cornett did this, Luke Cornett is getting a game, if not 2-game suspension for that. Because it's Wembanyama and God forbid the NBA can have this series go on without Wemby. When he literally, that's assault, brother, what he did on the floor. If that's in the street, he's getting prison time. And he takes an elbow and nearly knocks Naz Reid unconscious. And like you said, Dylan Harper's reaction said it all. He couldn't believe it. He's like, oh my God. Because he realized in the moment what had happened. Victor Wembanyama is lucky that he's not getting more than the punishment that he rightfully deserved. He should be suspended for Game 5. And I think Adam Silver in the NBA, just because we can't have a Game 5 with Wemby not in it, that's the reason why. Not because of the rule book or anything else, because they've pulled out the rule book plenty of times in the past to give out multiple game suspensions for the same exact thing we saw last night, and he gets no suspension, no fine. I think it's a joke.
Yeah, they're a bunch of cowards. I totally agree with that sentiment, man. You got to keep it consistent. It doesn't matter what last name is emblazoned on the back of the jersey at all. It doesn't matter if it's a superstar. It doesn't matter if it's a bench warmer. In that moment, in that situation, when an elbow is blatantly thrown, and it was clear and obvious and evident that was premeditated and calculated, you have to suffer the proper repercussions. I mean, not even getting a fine is what I found absolutely astonishing about this. Completely baffling, just dumbfounding, and downright idiotic. That the NBA could even issue that, couldn't issue like 50,000, 100,000, 150,000, whatever the normal number is in those instances. They couldn't even do that. I can understand the suspension side of it because we got to draw the ratings, yada, yada, yada. But what I stress and what I am emphasizing, Pat, more than anything else, and this is across the board for all sports, if somebody goes out and basically commits a crime on the court, and that's exactly what that was, there is a penalty by the letter of the law, by the rule book, that blatantly states in black and white what the consequence is going to be. And, there's always a degree of, how the elbow was applied in whatever moment. I understand there was a conversation for that, but you have all the video evidence in the world in front of you. Just stand by the letter of the law. If it says this, you do that. If it says this other thing, well, you do that as well. Wemby should have been suspended and at a minimum should have got a hefty fine. So it's just an outright, you're correcting your adjective that you use. It's a joke, an absolute laughable joke. He got nothing. And this is coming from somebody who's a bit of a Spurs sympathizer. I think Wemby should have suffered some sort of consequence. Him getting nothing is just downright wrong.
Yeah, I mean, and again, and I'll even give you, because I gave you Draymond Green and I gave you a Metta World Peace, Ron Artest, so guys with the history of doing this. Hassan Whiteside didn't have a big history in 2016 when he elbowed to the neck of Boban Marjanovic. He got a 1-game suspension, and again, in the rule book, a punch is legally, in the NBA rule book, throwing a punch comes with at least a 1-game suspension. This is better than a punch because it's his elbow that it can actually, you can make the argument that can do more. Yeah. That could do more damage than a punch. That was meditated. Correct. There was a wind-up and everything. It wasn't even like you could even Spurs fans that are blind to the reality or the truth of things because they just want to root for Wemby and the Spurs. That even Spurs fans can't even make the claim that it was incidental, like he's trying to clear his No, he literally wound up. He knew Naz Reid was right there, and he clocked him. But you're telling me that if it was his fist instead of his elbow, it's an automatic 1-game suspension. But because it's an elbow, we're not going to suspend him. I mean, are you freaking kidding me? And of course, Mitch Johnson, he was asked about it. And the credit on this is to ESPN on the Wembanyama ejection after the game where, again, he gets tossed last night for elbowing Naz Reid in the jaw/neck.
Every single play on every single part of the floor, people are trying to impose their physicality on him. I get it. We get it. That's part of the game. But at some stage, he's gotten chucked. He's gotten pushed down in transition, running freely, all the stuff. He doesn't complain one time. We don't complain because we're just going to play. We don't really give, excuse my language. But at some stage, he should be protected. And if not, he's going to have to protect himself. And unfortunately, stuff like that happens.
Yeah, he's going to be he's going to have to be protected, or he's going to protect himself. Getting pushed down in transition, getting knocked over, getting harshly fouled is one thing. Winding up and intentionally crushing somebody in their jaw with your elbow is a completely other thing. Mitch Johnson also went on to say that a suspension would be ridiculous for Game 5. So, again, I've still yet to hear one person make the claim that Wemby should not be suspended for Game 5, other than this fugazi, well, his ejection was penalty enough. No, it's not. Because, again, if it was a punch, not only would he be ejected, according to the rule book, he would also serve a 1-game suspension. So the whole, his ejection was, no, it's literally not. He should be suspended for Game 5. This is preferential treatment, and this is ridiculous. And if you needed a reason, again, I've been a doubter of the Spurs, Brad. You've heard it here most of the season, all postseason. If you needed a reason to not want to align yourself with Wemby and the Spurs, and this is such a great story. Look how this team rebounded after they basically tanked the last couple of years. And as if they were so likable when Popovich was their coach, and Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and all the titles they won then. Like, we really need to see another Spurs dynasty. This is the moment to align yourself with the right side of history and root for the T-Wolves to win the rest of this series. It's a best of 3 now, and I think they can. And I think Minnesota can do it. And again, Wemby should be suspended for Game 5, but even though he'll be out there, I still think Minnesota can win that game, or they can win the final 2 games of this series, because they've already beaten San Antonio on the road. And at what I saw last night, backs against the wall, Wemby in there or not, the way Anthony Edwards played, and Ant-Man is the number one reason I think Minnesota can pull this off.
Well, yeah, I mean, he erupted for 36 points last night, and that's the key. Anthony Edwards is capable of doing that every single game. He can really stuff the stat sheet and just catch fire and carry the team on his back. Obviously, he had support last night, as Julius Randle had a dozen, along with 8 rebounds. Jay McDaniel scored 14. Rudy Gobert, had a double-double, 11 and 13. And 6 offensive rebounds. Ayo Dosunmu finally showed up and shook off the rust after missing a couple of games. He had 10 points in 30 minutes. And then Naz Reid scored 15 on the bench. Mike Conley, Old Man River, had 8. And my ILL standout, much like Ayo, Terrence Shannon, who's been, key, whether coming off the bench or in the starting lineup, he had 8 points off the pine, although he was only 3 of 12 in the game. Of course, Minnesota out-rebounded the Wemby-less San Antonio Spurs 49-41, but the 3-ball was falling more consistently than the sporadic splashes that San Antonio had. Try saying that like 5 times fast. San Antonio just 6 of 26 from way downtown. The T-Wolves 10 of 27. This series is going to go limit. There's no question about it. It's not going to wrap in 6. It's going to wrap in 7. And I think Game 7, San Antonio, Minnesota, it's going to be a coin flip. I'm kind of with you right now. My lean is to go the Minnesota Timberwolves. Obviously, getting the road split to open up the series was colossal. And they're still, the thick of it, of course, knotted up at 2-2 in this series. So I think Minnesota, me being a betting man, I give them a slight advantage over San Antonio, largely due to the depth, and they've just been better from outside, and they can match board for board with or without Wemby.
310-840-4910. Do you think Wembanyama should be suspended for Game 5, and do you think the T-Wolves can win this series now that it's 2 games apiece? Yeah, look, just to follow up on last night, to give a shout-out to your Ayo Dosunmu, the T-Wolves put this game away for good when Chris Finch put Ayo Dosunmu back on the floor, and they took Gobert off the floor. I think they were running at the end of the game. It was Randall, Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards, Naz Reid, and Ayo Dosunmu. That's who they closed with. And, they had some success running the double big lineup, right? With like Gobert on the floor and Naz Reid as well, especially with Wemby off of it, because that forces San Antonio to gang up on Rudy Gobert. You don't have 7'5" Wembanyama defending him. I know Rudy Gobert is not the biggest offensive threat, but man, all the dribble drive handoffs to him, and then it's just an easy slam. Like he was hurting them bad. But Chris Finch could have stuck with that. Instead, he said, you know what? I want to get my most athletic guys, and I want to get a little bit better of an offensive lineup out there. And he put Ayo Dosunmu back in the game. It was maybe like 3 or 4 minutes left. And that's when Minnesota took over and really put the pedal to the metal and put this thing out of reach. They were down 8 points early in the fourth quarter. And I was like, wow. I'm driving back from my sister's house last night for Mother's Day. And I'm thinking, wow, wasn't watching it. I wasn't distracted driving, but I may or may not have the broadcast on. And I was listening, and maybe the occasional peek down, maybe. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, they are really going to lose this game when Wemby gets ejected and they're at home. Like, this would be classic T-Wolves. And then Anthony Edwards stepped up. And again, Brad, I think the biggest reason that they can win the rest of this series is because of Ant-Man. And going into this series, we didn't know what he was going to be like. Game 1, he comes back. First 2 games, plays off the bench with the hyperextended left knee and the bone bruise, and he looked pretty damn good. He took that to a new level last night. 40 minutes, 36 points, 13 to 22 shooting. Like, he looks close to 100%. He'll still mention it. The post game, I heard him say, I think he was talking about Dylan Harper. He goes, yeah, the rookie knew I would have dunked on him if I had my full legs, but it's all good. So, like, he's still not 100%, at least in his admission. I think he's close. And I think the debate we had after game 1 was, would Anthony Edwards get healthier as the series went on? Or is there the chance that he could re-aggravate this injury? I think it's the former now. I mean, it could happen, but I think it's less likely now that we're a couple games in here. He doesn't seem to be getting worse. He's getting better. And so Anthony Edwards, the way he played last night and took this freaking game over, he's the best player on the floor. I know Wemby might make that claim in a year from now, but right now I still think Anthony Edwards is the most impactful player on the floor because of his scoring. He plays pretty damn good defense too. He can grab 8 to 10 rebounds when needed. We know he can dish out the dimes. If the T-Wolves and if Ant-Man stays healthy the final 2-3 games of this series, Minnesota will win it, because we didn't know if he would be 100%. I tend to think he will be close to it now as this series progresses. That's why I like Minnesota, and they usually play up to the competition. Because you can make the argument, Brad, that, well, they nearly lost last night once Wemby left the floor. And I think that's just as much as we can praise the T-Wolves, you can crush them. They play down to their competition. San Antonio played pretty free without Wemby, right? They kind of embraced that. All right, screw it. We're not supposed to win this game. And then all of a sudden they start hitting threes, and Harrison Barnes is coming off the bench and making plays. But I think now that Minnesota knows they've got a big task ahead, where you should get a motivated Wemby, game 5 on the road in San Antonio, I think that's when you can expect the best out of Minnesota, because they have to rise to the occasion. I think they will. And I won't be shocked if they win game 5 outright. I know you think it's going 7. I think maybe Minnesota can win 3 games in a row and knock this series off in 6 here.
Wow. That's Team Huevos take right there, but I like it. And just to add cherry on top of the study, you're 100% correct in your assessment. Anthony Edwards, again, 40 minutes last night, 36 points, peak efficient. Dude has guts. Dude has huevos. Dude has huevos. He got this.